Hello everyone. Good afternoon. Those who are living in India. Good evening. Good morning. Those who are living across the world. Before we start our program, I request those of them who are not from the background of NIMHANS Institute. So I request you all to keep your videos off. This session is basically based on the research student from NIMHANS. So we are morely focused on NIMHANS research students. And those who are the NIMHANS participants, could you please turn on your videos and put the microphone on mute? So Geshe would be have more interactive session with you all. And welcome all to the program on core concept of true nature of the mind, emptiness, ontological reality, and the effects of their meditation on the psychology and physiology of the individuals. So before we start the program, I request Professor Bindu Kutty to kindly address the gathering. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to inform you that we are all sitting in the same hall. So, you know, they are using the same system what I am using now. Okay. So, a very good afternoon from India, and warm welcome to you all to this program on 4-day virtual course on the core concept of true nature of the mind and emptiness by Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdul, Director, Tibet House, that is the cultural center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And as we have been associated with Geshe for a long years now, and he's a good friend of ours and a well-wisher of our center. And the center is, I'm so happy to announce also the center is going to have collaboration with the Tibet House to conduct studies on neuroscience of consciousness from Buddhist contemplative practices. So before we study, we thought it is felt that it is very important for us to have much clarity on the core concepts of nature of the mind and how Buddhist contemplative practices help to cultivate insights on the ultimate nature of self and reality, and how Buddhist meditative practices help to develop experiential knowledge of contemplative concepts such as emptiness, non-self, impermanence, interconnectedness, non-attachment, etc. So we thought it will be ideal to have this course for us to have much clarity. And Geshe has come forward to Tibet House has taken all initiative to organize this crash course on a virtual mode. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdul and for starting this course. And before you start the course, it gives me great pleasure to read out, to share with you a very brief bio sketch of Geshe. So I'll just read out that, then I invite Geshe to start the course. So Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdul is presently the Director, Tibet House, New Delhi, that is the cultural center of His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. Geshe Dorji Damdul completed his formal studies in Buddhist logic, philosophy and epistemology at Dharmashala, and 15 years of his study in Buddhist philosophy, he was bestowed with Geshe Larampa degree, that is equivalent to PhD, in 2002 from Dripang Losling Monastic University. He also studied English at Cambridge University and is a visiting fellow at Girton College, Cambridge University. He also worked with Professor Paul Ekman, a world-renowned psychologist at University of California Medical School. Paul Ekman co-authored with His Holiness the Dalai Lama's book on emotional awareness. Geshe also functioned as faculty of philosophy at Emory University currently the visiting fellow to Delhi University in various departments like philosophy, psychology, and Buddhist studies. He is the chief expert to design the syllabi for BA and MA course on the Tibetan studies as a part of Indira Gandhi National Open University program. Geshe also has functioned as the official translator to His Holiness since 2005. He also translated many texts from Tibetan into English, such as Arya Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamiga Karika, that is the fundamental wisdom of the middle way, Acharya Shantideva's Bodhicharya Varata, that is wisdom chapter. He was one of the chief editors of the textbook on Buddhist science and philosophy, and this book has been referred very extensively across universities by students and faculty for Buddhist philosophy, metaphysics, epistemology, and science. He also worked on His Holiness Dalai Lama's book, Ethics for New Millennium, Part 2, later came up with the title Beyond Religion, and the series of Art of Happiness book, which were jointly written by His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Professor Howard Cutler. He actively involved in critical editing work with other books of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, like The Graded Path. He presented a number of important papers, The Paradox of Brain and Mind, The Ultimate Reality according to Arya Nagarjuna, in many of the national and international conferences. He is in the process of writing two important books, one on Journey into the Paradox of Brain and Mind, and the other, What Constitutes the Ultimate Reality, the Effect of Understanding the Ultimate Reality. Besides his administrative responsibility as the director of Tibet House, the cultural center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, New Delhi, he also gives regular lectures in Tibet House and in Tibet House, and also in many places in various universities in India and abroad. Geshe is a great friend of ours and a well-wisher of our center. We look forward to work with him on neuroscience of consciousness from the Buddhist contemplative practices. It gives me great pleasure, Geshe, to welcome you, and over to you now to start the program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Bindu Kutty, the head of the Center for Consciousness Studies, NIMHANS. It has been many years that that we have been knowing each other, and that Tibet House is a great honor that Tibet House. We invited Dr. Binduji a number of times to give lectures on neuroscience and also to take part in conferences on neuroscience and Buddhist psychology. Today, how this program came into being, to give you just quick background of this, is that Dr. Binduji wrote to me saying that that NIMHANS, particularly Center for Consciousness Studies, NIMHANS, is going to do some research on meditation, effects of the meditation on emptiness. Then, given that this is something which I have been thinking since over 15, 16 years, that most of the people who conduct researches in Buddhism is mostly related to mindfulness, compassion, and only once I vaguely heard about research on the meditation on emptiness. It was so vague. I did not really got a full picture of that. And yet, in my mind, I was just wondering that if somebody, a reputed institution, can pick up this as a research, meditation, the effect of the meditation on emptiness, on our brain, and our emotional world. So then when Professor Binduji wrote to me, then I thought that now this is the right time, because as Binduji is very familiar with Dr. Richard Davidson, I think about like 12, 13 years ago. Of course, he's a renowned neuroscientist. They have been doing from Wisconsin University, and he also runs his own laboratory there. And I suggested that he should conduct the research on the meditative emptiness. And the first thing that he asked me was that I need the subjects. And he said that if I have the subjects, I will be readily doing it right away. This is what he said, and that's very true. So therefore, this is an extremely important point which he raised, that I need the subjects. And given that under the leadership of Professor Bindu, that's the Center for Consciousness Studies, NIMHANS, is thinking of undertaking the research on meditation and emptiness. And the question which Professor Richard Davidson, he just struck me. Coming together, I thought that it would be good that some idea as to what emptiness is must be there within the research scholars. So without which, then it can become very very vague. It will not become clear. Unlike the meditation compassion, unlike the meditation on mindfulness, this requires a very rigorous analytical inquiry. And for this, I'm going to quickly touch on this area as to why this study is required, particularly for those people who are going to be involved as researchers, not as the subjects, but as researchers. So why the knowledge of emptiness is required for these people. Okay, the first slide. And I've the few slide shows. And for your information, it is that the 4-day teaching going to be really overview. Is by no means is going to go into details. And I can see that there are many of some of the participants here who are taking part in this, who are already exposed to the Buddhist philosophy to a great extent. And of course, the target audience are the research fellows, research scholars from NIMHANS. So therefore, the point is that I'm going to give the overview, broader picture, and that should they be some of the research scholars who want to really go deeper into this, to make the research, make their respective researchers more effective, then for sure there are many ways by which we can help. Okay, with this in mind, therefore, as for the topic is that the true nature of the mind, what the mind is, and then the emptiness of the mind, ontological reality, which quantum mechanics and relativity theory they're trying to explore, and then the effects of the meditation on the true nature of the mind, and emptiness on psychology and physiology of the individual. Okay, so with this in mind, the next slide. Okay, so benefits of emptiness class or emptiness studies on the part of the research scholars, those people who are going to be involved as researchers with the efficacy of the research on emptiness meditation. So the reason why we are doing this is that the research that we're going to do, this no doubt is going to be a breakthrough research, because for several reasons. Number one, that to get the subjects is so difficult. To get subjects for people who are doing the mindfulness meditation, that's easy. That's not difficult. To get the subjects who do say compassion meditation, that's also not difficult. And you can even, there are cases where say you just pick up volunteers, and the volunteers are, they're trained on emptiness for like a few days, and they're assigned to meditate for 40 days, 50 days, 2 months, 3 months, and so forth. That's easy. So this on emptiness is going to be very different. So the point is that the subjects is so difficult to get the subjects, because in order for you to really understand why I'm emphasizing on this part so much, is that, believe it or not, it took me like 14 years since I gave the suggestion to Professor Richard Davidson, a neuroscientist, that he should conduct a research on the meditation emptiness. And the first question they asked me is, bring me the subjects. So now this is a huge the challenge. So I indicated this to Professor Bindu, that now you are very fortunate. You are in Bangalore, which is right next to the place, but the places, several places where you can get the best of the subjects. In this world, you will not find any better place, the places than these three: Sera, Depong, Gandan monasteries, and also there's Namdul monastery there in South India, which is the Nyingma monastery. Again, there's very rigorous studies on emptiness. So we see that these are the places where you can get the best of the subjects. You can get the best of the subjects. Okay, so this is why this research is going to be very special in ways that other people, they cannot get these subjects, and whereas you can readily get the subjects, and particularly if you NIMHANS as an institution, not as a department, but as an institution, if you can sign the MOU with these big monastic universities like Debong Losel Monastery, or Sera Ganden, Gomang, and the Namdruling Monastery, if you can sign. And then, of course, Dr. Bindu Guruji is thinking of, the bringing the two together, NIMHANS and Debong Losel Monastic University. Okay, number one is this subject. So, in this case, the why, what's the benefit of this emptiness class? Related to the efficacy of the research on emptiness meditation. Number one, greatest possibility for research to be objective. So this research, of course, the research should be extremely objective, but then without the subject, how are we going to do the research? So the next point is selection of the subjects. Subjects, if you know what emptiness is, how intricate the subject is, then you will be in a position to pick up the best of the subjects rather than just picking up volunteers. Then the next is designing the research. How are you going to design it? Because you know the concept so well, and you have your personal a little bit of experience as to how this meditative emptiness has effect on reducing the stress, how it is the effect on say the electromagnetic, say the waves, how it is effect on these electrodes and so forth. So on that basis, you will see, for example, the stress, or say the calmness, and all these elements through your own experience. Little bit of, even that be very little, that can be incredibly great use benefit that you will know how to design. So for example, why I'm saying this is that with a meditation on compassion, with a meditation on mindfulness, meditation on emptiness, there the effects are different. They're not starkly different, but they're different. Compassion has, say, it will make a mind, say, little buoyant. It will make a mind buoyant and joyous. Whereas the stability, the mindfulness meditation, or meditation, the breathing meditation sensations, meta awareness, they will make our mind. They will make a mind not really joyous as such. They'll make a mind the more stable and the coolness. And then with the emptiness meditation, it will give a very profound experience of the fearlessness, which is going to be like a direct remedy to the stress, anxiety, the fear, depression, so forth. So they have different effects. And if the researchers, they know these things experientially, then they will be the best people to look for how to design the research. Okay, then the nuance areas to research on. So particularly, let's say, okay, now I'm going to see how this meditation emptiness is related to reducing the stress, how that's going to be related to the, so whatever areas that you attention and so forth, the power to mitigate your mental disturbance and so forth. The one, design research per se. The second one is the areas, the different areas where you can see that experience, you can feel something. On that basis, you can design the research. Then the next one is differences among the meditations with their respective unique effectual benefits. So how, say, usually people get a feeling that, okay, we are doing research in contemplative, the contemplative, practices, traditions, and by the neuroscientists, or we employ neuroscience to explore the contemplative traditions. And what is that contemplative traditions? Usually mindfulness and compassion and meta-awareness. That's it. So the point is that it's not just one side. There are so many areas. If you know these nuances, if you know these, the different areas, many different areas of the meditation, then you will be in a position to design the meditation and to depending on what kind of effectual benefits that you are seeking and which aspect of meditation has which benefit. This is what you can explore. Then the next part is the right collaborators. You will be in a position to look for the good collaborators. Oftentimes, some people, they talk about all the Buddhist meditation, and the research in Buddhist meditation is so naive. It's extremely broad, and they just think that everything is just one part, which is mindfulness meditation. So you will see that you will be in a position to advise them. You will be in a position to pick up the right collaborators in case if some of the collaborators, they have their own fixed mind, thinking about what the Buddhist practice is. So this is so basically how this can help the researchers, the research scholars. If you yourself know the emptiness concept well, then you are the best person who can design this particular research in the most effective way. And this is something that's going to be like a breakthrough research, because thus far that I just heard vaguely about the research on the meditation emptiness. I'm quite I'm not too sure how effective that is, because the subject is a huge issue, and the subject means somebody. Say, for example, it is like this is very important point. It is like saying we're going to do a research on the effect the brain correlates or the neuro correlates of the mind in the case of the study of quantum mechanics. Then you pick up volunteers who have no exposure to what quantum mechanics is, and then you give some lecture on quantum mechanics for one day. This is totally naive. Quantum mechanics means people spend 10, 20 years to understand quantum mechanics. It's not that giving just one lecture, the person can understand, can meditate on this. Impossible. And this is by no means exception to the emptiness meditation. So it requires lots of the intellectual studies, rigorous studies, that one can actually get emptiness. Where somebody you pick up from the street as a volunteer we can't imagine that person to get the experience of emptiness within just 1 week, 1 week or say 1 month of training. It is impossible. So the best of the subjects are available in these big monastery universities. So this is how the researchers, if you know what emptiness is, then you will be able to, you really become the legitimate person to design design your research well, plus look for the subject properly, and plus the various facets of the research, all these things, you'll be able to do that. And then later on, when you try to explain this to the world of the scientific world, then people will be convinced that you actually know all these nuances yourself. Okay, this is why the 4-day program is happening. Okay, next slide. Okay, then the next part is so basically what we're trying to do is on emptiness, but then the topic is, we see that they're all related. They say the mind, what is mind, and then the emptiness of the mind, number 2, and then how the meditation on the emptiness of mind, it affects the person's physiology, and within the physiology, of course, the researchers, you know the best how to go into the various aspects of that. So for that, we need to know first we begin with what is mind. What is mind? Okay, in this connection, when you speak about, even the center is known as the Center for Consciousness Studies. Just for information, that consciousness, this word consciousness, is what we borrow from the English dictionary. And we have to keep in mind that this consciousness, how this word is borrowed by the different traditions of Asia, Asian philosophy, Asian psychology, they differ. They differ. Some of the traditions, when they borrow this word, the consciousness, they borrow it to understand the self, the Atma, or the self. Whereas the particular, I would say, the Center for Consciousness Studies, NIMHANS, so this should be something empirical entity, something which we can experience, something which we can explain, something which we can measure. And measure, I'm not too sure, but something which is empirical in the sense that something which everybody experiences, which we can share, which is something of relevance to our to the neuroscience research, to the research of the stress, the positive psychology, and so forth. It should be something empirical. In other words, so now in the Buddhist context, when you speak about the mind or the consciousness, in the first place, these two words are borrowed as interchangeably. Borrowed from the English word as interchangeably, mind and consciousness interchangeably. It means it has nothing to do with something which is beyond our apprehension. It is something that a neuroscientist can do research on, something which is empirical, This is so important. So in what way it is empirical, this mind or consciousness? Number one, it is many people, they think that the mind is something which we cannot really, nobody knows what mind is, what consciousness is. But here, whenever I use the word consciousness, keep in mind that this is empirical mind that everybody experiences. Okay, now what is this mind? It is defined as clear and knowing agent. Clear and knowing agent. Clear has the connotation of something which is luminous, and knowing has the connotation of something which is cognitive. Clear and knowing, or luminous and cognitive agent. What is luminous? It is not something, it's not, when we study the concept of the mind, something which we can relate to neuroscience, or which we can do comparative studies with that of neuroscience, it should be empirical in nature. If it's not empirical, if somebody cannot really experience it, then we cannot really correlate this with neuroscience. So whatever I'm trying to explain, make it a point that there is some basis for one to correlate this with the neuroscience. In other words, we talk about the neural correlates. When you think, or when you experience something, when you feel something, what are the neural correlates? Which means that we're looking for the, let's say, the parallels. We are looking for the relationship between the workings of the mind and the functions of the brain. So here it says the clear. It is, this is so important. First, we need to know, before we speak about the consciousness or the mind, we really need to know what the mind is. before we really go into details of this, we have to know what the mind is. And in that too, something not vague or abstract idea, it must be something that at least you, the individual, the researchers, should know what it is. And then on that basis, then you do the research. That is going to be very effective. Otherwise, you say something, and then somebody else says something, and they just go, they without any, say, the correlations, without any the conversions, they just go in the different directions. So clear, it is like, say, your mind. When you think of a flower, for example, in your house, you stay inside your house without a flower and think of a flower. When you think of flower, image of the flower comes to you. This is undeniable fact. This is undeniable reality that the image of the flower can come to you when you think of the flower. So say for any image to be formed on the mirror, image to be formed on the water body, there must be surface, and the surface must be very clear. If the mirror is very dusty, the image cannot be formed. If on the water body, the leaves and dust covers the surface of water, again the image cannot be formed. The image of the moon cannot be formed. For the image to be formed, the surface must be very clear. And in our case, when you think of the flower, the image of the flower comes to your mind. So there, for this image to be formed, the surface, wherever it is being formed, that surface must be clear. So that surface is none other than your own mind, which is not tangible, which is not physical, yet you feel that the reflection is formed. Undeniably, the reflection of the flower is formed, and the surface on which it is formed is known as the mind, and the surface must be very clear. So the first part is clear. The next one is knowing. Now, in the case of the mirror, although it's very clear, the reflection is formed, but the mirror doesn't know that the reflection is formed. But in your case, while the image is formed, when you think of the flower, image of the flower is formed, which means that the surface on which it is formed, your mind, is clear, and not only that, the image is formed, it knows that the image is formed. If I ask you later, okay, what image came to your mind? What were you thinking? I was thinking of a flower. So you could remember, you know that the image is formed. So knowing, that's second aspect, the cognitive. This is cognitive nature. So it has the luminous nature and a cognitive nature. So that agent, which is not a physical, but you can have the first-hand experience, which is nature of the clarity and the knowing. These two combined together as the agent is known as your mind. This is what everybody experiences. Everybody, whether you're a believer or non-believer, whether you're scientist, not scientist, everybody has this experience. And this is the one which drives us in all our actions. The fear of COVID-19, depression, anxiety, joy, happiness, everything is happening on this level. And yet there are the brain correlates of that. So these two go hand in hand. And for the researchers, particularly for Dr. Binduji's students, if you are keen to learn about what are the correlations between brain and mind, that would be perhaps we can do some other time. For time being, I'm trying to give a very broad overview to get to the emptiness. Okay, the next. Now, what is so important for the neuroscientists to know is this mind, or the consciousness that we are talking about, which is empirical in nature, which you know that yes, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling the happy. So this consciousness, which I explained earlier, the mind, it has various levels. And then the neuroscientists, for you talk about the alpha wave, beta wave, theta wave, and so forth. You talk about these. So it's all about the subtlety of the mind which we are talking about, which always works in correlation with the brain. These two, when they work hand in hand, sometimes the different waves are being scent or immediate, like sometimes the beta more, sometimes theta more, sometimes the alpha more. So these various waves. So on the brain level, you see that the different waves are being sent, and then on the mental level, we speak about the gross and the subtle mind. And so this is another area that would be very interesting if if NIMHANS, you can consider this. Say the from the top, we see the first one is a waking state. When the person is fully awakened, and the mind is very gross. The mind is very gross, and you can see the brain correlates. The mind is very gross. Then next one is a sleep state. In the sleep, we talk about the REM sleep, non-REM sleep, the sleep, and then the deep sleep. The deep sleep on the non-REM sleep, during the deep sleep. The deep sleep is where the person will not have any memory of this the next time. And then the next one is unconscious state. Unconscious state, meaning this is not like how the philosophers, how the logicians, the psychologists, ancient classical psychologists, they explain about. No, this is in a very vernacular, conventional sense. Somebody becomes unconscious. Somebody faints. When somebody faints, the consciousness or the mind is still there, yet this mind has become subtler. The mind has become subtler. And then the dying states. When the person goes through the stages of dying, then the mind becomes subtler. And I'm sure, particularly the neuroscientists, the students, and the faculties alike, you must be interested to know what do you mean by subtle. This is a very interesting topic. What do you mean by subtle? Mind becomes subtler. So you talk about during the sleep state, then the theta waves are emitted more. So this is what I call as the subtlest is the mind, and what waves are being sent or being created, and what's going into on the mental level, what's going there. So you can feel the mind as very subtle. And one indication is that as the mind becomes subtler, it becomes more independent from the physical body. It can become more independent from the physical body. Say, for example, in a waking state, our subtle mind is not really activated. It's very gross mind, and because of which, the mind is heavily dependent on the external things, like your body, the external objects, and so forth. Whereas, as you go into sleep, then the mind becomes more subtle, and because of which, the physiological movements can happen. To how you move your mind, that will have a corresponding physiological movements within your body. You could feel that. This is something very interesting topic. And then, of course, in the Buddhist, the psychology, this dying process, how the mind becomes subtler, is explained in the various stages, and the final stage is known as clear light, and it is described. These descriptions are made on a basis of what kind of appearances happen, and so mainly on the basis of the appearances and the corresponding subtle energy. Okay, the next. Now we talk about, I say, the calming the mind through meditation. Of course, neuroscientists, there's a research to be done on the various aspects of the meditation and so forth, and the brain correlates. This is one part. Then number two is your clinical applications. Of course, people, they go through stress, anxiety, depression, so forth, and psychosis and so forth. How do you? And they will bring to the neuroscientists. First, they will take to the psychiatrist, and psychiatrist will eventually take the person to the neuroscientist. So what do you have to offer? What can you offer? So for that, all these researches are happening. So in other words, say generally speaking, it's like calming the mind, where the mind is gripped by the psychosis, or the mind is gripped by the anxiety attack, or depression and stress and so forth. So how to quell the mind, how to calm the mind through meditation. So and of course now there are many researches are being done, and if you as I go down, you will come to realize that yes, there are these researches being done. So the first one is the what we call as meditation. Oftentimes, some people they have an impression that meditation means just close eyes and focus your mind on something. This is a very naive understanding of meditation. Keep in mind that the whole purpose of meditation, soteriological speaking, it is to bring about the highest states of the consciousness, or the highest states of the mind. And then the more clinical, in clinical context, it is to quell your mind and to heal your respective problems like stress, depression, anxiety, psychosis, and so forth. So in this connection, meditation, we should keep in mind that meditation, it is of two kinds. One is known as single-pointed meditation, given here, single-pointed meditation, and the other one is analytical meditation. Broadly speaking, meditation is of two kinds: single-pointed meditation and the analytical meditation. Now, why these two are classified as two different meditations? One is to build the stability of the mind, stability. And then the details will go a little later. Each one of them, what constitutes single-point meditation, what constitutes analytical meditation. The single-point meditation is to build the stabilization, to create a stability of the mind, stabilization of the mind. And then for the analytical meditation, which involves analysis, analytical meditation, there are primarily, broadly speaking, there are two. One is compassion meditation, and the other one is wisdom meditation. The wisdom of emptiness now comes here. Wisdom of emptiness, compassion meditation, and the wisdom meditation under the analytical meditation. Broadly, two. Now, let's say that when somebody meditates, let's say the stress hormones, what's the correlation with the reduction of the stress hormones? In all these three cases, the stress hormones will get reduced. Stress hormones for sure will get reduced, and the respective, let's say the other hormones, happy hormones like oxytocin, dopamine, they can be released. They can be released in all three. But what I would say is that what neuroscientists need to keep in mind is that first, you are the one to make the correlation. So, okay, these are the experiences being shared. These are different facets of the meditation shared, and with the corresponding the experiences, and then what would be the brain correlates. What would be the brain correlates, and what would be the correlation in the context of what the hormones released, and particularly I would say, to be more precise, neural correlates. So that is your job. So the first one is what happens, for example, like mindfulness meditation. Of course, we'll go in a little more detail that to give you an overview of this. What happens is that mindfulness meditation, the mind, our mind, which say with the problem of say anxiety and psychosis, hypertension, and the depression, and so forth. So there, what is happening is that the mind is in the form of disturbed state. Mind is in a disturbed state. Now, if you practice how to stabilize the mind, just to stabilize the mind, like focusing on a particular object, like the breath, or like the sensation, or the meta-awareness, and so forth, what happens is that the mind will build inertia, and when for some other reasons, whatever reasons, particularly cognitive reasons, say the awareness because of the environment, and then that affects the individual, the mind being stirred. So when you practice how to stabilize your mind on the breath, on the sensations, so forth, for a long time, then the mind builds the inertia with external factors. It will not be wavered easily. So this is how it controls. It controls your, it controls the secretion of the stress hormones, because you are not, you don't fall prey to the disturbance. When the disturbance happens, then the stress hormones are released. So the point is that this is how this meditation also reduces the stress hormones. Now, now let's say the compassion practice. With the compassion practice, even though you may not be trained to stabilize your mind to sit in one particular object, with the compassion it becomes like the mother's mind, mother who finds so difficult to go through burnout cases with for nursing the small child, whereas a nurse will easily go through burnout, will easily feel the burnout taking care of the child for a long period of time. So why? Because the mother is the love. So this love and compassion, that helps us to control the stress hormones. So that is again how the compassion helps. That also helps to reduce the stress hormones, and you can go longer period of time, and you will not be prone to the burnout. So this is compassion practice helps in that way. Helps in that way to keep your mind calm and not disturbed. Then number 3 is the wisdom. Wisdom. But the wisdom is the one which cognitively knows the reality. So therefore, you are prepared. You're prepared and you know how to solve the problems. Because of this, you become very confident. So with this confidence, the disturbance doesn't happen. When the disturbance doesn't happen, again, the stress hormones are being stopped. They're being under control. So we see that in all these 3 meditations, single point of meditation, analytical meditation, which is grouped into 2, compassion, wisdom, all these 3 have play a great role in stopping your stress hormones. So that is universal. So stopping the stress hormone is universal in all 3. So therefore, some people, they think that we do research on the meditation, and this reduces the stress hormone, and it helps them heal the person. This is a universal thing. So now, after knowing these 3, broadly speaking, these 3 kinds of meditation, once you know that, then it is your job. If possible, even the individual should have some experience of what that is like when your compassion increases. What is that like when your wisdom increases? What is that like when your single point meditation is stabilized? On that basis, we see that the difference, I'm going to show you a very quickly share difference among these 3. Stabilization meditation, single point of meditation, for example, like say the breathing meditation or the sensation meditation, and the meta awareness is slightly different. On the single sensation meditation, breathing meditation, what they will do is that they will calm, they will just stabilize your mind, and then which is directly opposite of the disturbance. Stability versus disturbance. When the disturbance is not there, you feel you feel what is known as the equilibrium state. You could feel the equilibrium state. In other words, that's the feeling of the stability there. Feeling the stability, and in the process, the cool, the cold waves, tickling sensations, so forth, can happen once in a while. But overall speaking, the major experiences in terms of gaining a tranquility of the mind, your mind becomes very tranquil. This is the primary effect. Then for the compassion meditation, the tranquility is there, but the primarily the effect is in the form of, I would say that it'll give you a sense of buoyancy, a sense of the joy, which means like the dopamine, then oxytocin, the tendency with the compassion meditation, these to be released is more as compared to the single point of meditation, like meditation, breathing meditation, and the sensation meditation. As compared to them, for the compassion meditation, the tendency to release those the happy hormones is more, because you feel the joyous, your mind feels uplifted and feels so joyous. This is a very different experience, number 2. And then number 3, the wisdom. Wisdom, the joy given by compassion is not there with the wisdom. With the wisdom, it gives the fearlessness, it gives the confidence and the fearlessness. And for information, all 3 have, number 1, the control of the stress hormone, they say the stability and the a tinge of joy or joy and the fearless. But uniqueness is that the first one with the more, which is more emphatic on the, say, the tranquility experience. Second one with more emphasis on the, say, the joyous experience with the happy hormones released more with the compassion. But the third one is the confidence. The confidence is more as compared to in other words, the third one, the wisdom, that is specialized in creating the confidence and fearlessness. And with compassion, it is specialized in expanding your joy. And then the first one is they specialize in bringing tranquility. And what if somebody is all 3? Yes, then one will become really rich in all these 3 experiences. So in other words, for the researchers, if they have their own insight into the differences and the nuances of these 3 meditations, that will have a tremendous benefit to make the research more refined. The next. Okay, now the single pointed meditation. Within this, so this what I have is in my computer, when material is transferred to other computers, everything gets changed. Okay, so the calming the mind through meditation, single pointed meditation. This is all these different styles become the same. So okay, never mind, doesn't matter. A single calming the mind through meditation, it has 2, which we said earlier, single point of meditation and the analytical meditation. On the single point of meditation, then you have the mindfulness meditation, breathing meditation, meditation sensation, walking meditation, meta-awareness meditation, and so forth. Many of all these meditations, they fall under the category of single pointed meditation. So if somebody is to say the mindfulness meditation, of course, within mindfulness meditation, in fact, under single point of meditation, mindfulness meditation, then under the mindfulness, then the breathing, sensation, walking, they all come under this. And the meta-awareness, yes, it falls under mindfulness, but it is in par with the mindfulness under the single point of meditation. Okay, in other words, what I'm saying is that what we call as mindfulness meditation is just a part of it. Part of the Buddhist meditation, under this breathing meditation, sensation, walking meditation, they all fall under this. And then the meta-awareness meditation. This is a very special meditation. And not only that, it will give rise to the tranquility, it also has very profound effect, and the degree of the tranquility is very different. Tranquility that one gets from the mindfulness meditation of the breathing and the sensation, and the tranquility that you get out of the meta-awareness meditation. The meta-awareness meditation is going to be much more intense. But for this, again, to get a subject, this is a little complicated. Okay, the next. Now this analytical meditation. Under analytical meditation, what I have here is the broadly speaking form. In fact, broadly speaking, I indicated 3 under the analytical meditation. And why I'm giving all these things is for the researchers. And of course, later on, I will improvise this PowerPoint presentation, and then I'll leave it with Dr. Binduji and the researchers. You can take this, and then from there one person cannot really do research on all these things. It's impossible. Even a small part will take a lot of your time, but it's good for you to know and which area you want to specialize. For this, you need to know the broad picture. For that purpose, I'm giving this. Okay, under analytical meditation, broadly speaking, there are three: 4 seals meditation, 4 emotional meditation, 5 levels of emptiness meditation, which the 4 seals, Dr. Bindu Kutty already indicated in her introductory speech. And I'm going to go through through them one by one. The next slide. Okay, the 4 seals, it says, okay, calming the mind through meditation, analytical meditation, compassion meditation, then the meta-awareness meditation, 4 seals. Okay, other 4 seals. Other 4 seals, we see that, what are the 4 seals? So this is all, and I'm very sorry, because of the transfer material from one computer to the other, everything becomes just one. Okay, they're mixed up. Under 4 seals, there are 4, which the Dr. Bindu just said already: impermanence. When someone meditates impermanence, what the brain correlates. Then the next one is miseries, the nature of the dukkha, the miseries. Then the next one is emptiness. Then there's still the next one is nirvana. What is the experience of nirvana like when one experiences that? Okay, these are the 4 seals. These all fall under the category of the analytical meditation. For this, yes, some of them can be easier and some are more the intricate. The next slide. Okay. Next one is the 4 immeasurables. After the 4 seals, the next one, 4 immeasurables. 4 immeasurables and bodhicitta meditation. This is the compassion part. Under compassion part, we have 4 immeasurables plus the bodhicitta. The highest level of compassion is known as bodhicitta. Highest level of compassion is known as bodhicitta. And the first 4 immeasurables, immeasurable compassion, and say the compassion meditation. Compassion meditation, again, people say they put everything together in one box. That is not correct. Within the say practice of the say love and affection, there are 4 kinds. Number 1 is compassion, which we have to see the unique features. Compassion is the wishing others to be freed from suffering and its causes. Wishing others, a mind, feeling of love, which wishes others to be free from suffering and its causes. Number 1. Now, next one, loving kindness. Loving kindness is a feeling of love, which wishes others to have happiness and causes. These are very different. These two are not same. Number 3, immeasurable joy. Immeasurable joy, a feeling of love and affection, which wishes others not to be separated from happiness. Again, it's very different. So that will be very interesting if neuroscientists can do research on what are the different neurocorrelates when the person with the same feeling of love and affection, but they take the different forms. One is compassion, one is loving kindness, one is joy, and one is equanimity. The next is equanimity, wishing others not to be biased towards the other people. Okay, so these are the 4, and then on that basis, the highest level of compassion is the bodhicitta meditation. This in the blue there, so this is just everything got mixed up. The last one, the bodhicitta in the blue shade, you see that blue shade, bodhicitta meditation. So that is the wish for you to attain the state of perfection in order to benefit all the other beings. This is the most courageous feeling of love and affection, most courageous, intense feeling of love and affection. This is the practice of compassion. This is one part of the analytical meditation. Next slide. Okay, the next one is the 5 levels of emptiness meditation. After the 4 immeasurables, next the 5 levels of emptiness meditation. Under this, this is not to intimidate the researchers. There are so many levels of emptiness, emptiness, if some people may think that, okay, now we're going to have a 4-day teaching on emptiness so that we can do our research more easy, more effectively. And within emptiness, we need to keep in mind that there are various levels. If you know these are the nuances, then your research will become crystal clear. So this is the benefit. And I'm not to intimidate you with all these, the complications, nuances, divisions, but for you to get this information. And later on, whichever area you want to specialize on, you can do that. Okay. Emptiness, when you speak of the emptiness, people, this is where the subjects really need to have an incredibly the extended period of the learning, analytical inquiry. There are 5 of them which are indicated here, and particularly if you go to the big monastic universities, the scholars there, if you identify these 5, they'll be happy to discuss with you very easily. Otherwise, they may think that you go very naive. Okay, 5 levels of emptiness. In the middle, it says 5 levels of emptiness meditation. The first one is emptiness of permanent, unitary, and independent entity. The first one is the grossest. Then it progressively becomes subtler. Subtler as you go from top down. Second one is emptiness of autonomous substantial reality. Number 3 is emptiness of externality. Number 4 is emptiness of true existence while not rejecting objective existence. And number 5 is emptiness of objective / inherent / intrinsic existence. And over the next few days, when we go on emptiness meditation, explanation emptiness, we're going to focus on the number 5, the last one, which is the subtlest, but whether the individual gets to the subtlest, or even if you study the subtlest in your meditation, you may get the first one, not the 5th one. So that is why the subject, he or she must be extremely the qualitative scholar, really erudite scholar. That is the reason why here the subject plays a very important role. Okay, next slide. Okay, so okay, we go back. Okay, so with this, the point is that the 5 levels of emptiness, the 5 levels of emptiness, and from this, what we're going to study is the 5th one, the emptiness of objective existence. This is what we're going to study. With this, I like to first share with you what is the difference between what is known as conventional analysis and the ultimate analysis. Conventional analysis and the ultimate analysis. Okay. When we speak about emptiness, oftentimes people get a feeling that emptiness means nothingness. Emptiness is nihilism. This is what people think. Yet, emptiness, if somebody sees emptiness as nothingness, then you are far, far away from emptiness. So for that, what we have to know is that emptiness, the flip side of emptiness is dependent origination. Flip side of this is dependent origination. And dependent origination means the middle way. And let me do it again. Emptiness does not mean nothingness. If you think that it means nothingness, nothing exists. If this is one's understanding, this is absolutely wrong, because the real understanding of emptiness will come only if you understand the emptiness in the context of dependent origination. In other words, emptiness means dependent origination. Number two, dependent origination means the middle way. These are the basic axioms of the concept of emptiness. And for each one of them, we have to know how. We have to know the reason. First, emptiness means dependent origination. How these two are same? Emptiness equals dependent origination. How? So for this, we need to know 5 points. To know that emptiness means dependent origination, we need to know 5 points. Number one, that emptiness, the word emptiness, it is a short form of emptiness of independent existence. This is point number one. Emptiness, this is a short form of emptiness of independent existence. So number one is emptiness. Number two is the short form of emptiness of independent existence. Number three, emptiness of independent existence means nothing exists independently. Nothing exists independently. Number four, nothing exists independently means everything exists dependently. Okay, don't worry, I'll repeat them again. Everything exists dependently. Number five, everything exists dependently means everything is dependently originated. Okay, let me repeat them again. Number one, emptiness. Number two, emptiness is a short form of emptiness of independent existence. Number three, emptiness of independent existence means nothing exists independently. Number four, nothing exists independently means everything exists by dependence. Everything exists by dependence means everything is dependently originated. Okay, these are the 5 points. Now, with these 5 points, well, we come to deduce that emptiness means dependent origination. Emptiness means dependent origination. Next, dependent origination means the middle way. Dependent origination means the middle way. Middle way. How is dependent origination the middle way? Again, this we have to know. When you speak about dependent origination, it has two sides, dependence and origination. It has two sides, dependence and origination. When you speak of dependence, it rejects independence. When you say something is dependent, it rejects independence. Independence, absolute, independent existence, absolute existence, they mean the same. So when you say dependence, it rejects the extreme of absolutism. When you say dependent, it rejects the extreme of absolutism, that everything is absolute, independent, that is rejected. And the other side is origination. When you speak of origination means something comes into origination, something comes into existence. When we say something comes into existence, it rejects non-existence. Opposite of existence is non-existence. It rejects non-existence. Non-existence and nihilism, these two mean the same. Non-existence and nihilism, these two are same. So when you say origination, it rejects nihilism. When you say dependent, it rejects absolutism, extreme of absolutism, and combining the two together rejects the two extremes, extreme of absolutism and extreme of nihilism. Rejecting the two extremes is known as following the middle way. So therefore, dependent origination is the middle way. From this, what we come to know is that A equals B, B equals C, therefore A equals C, which means emptiness means dependent origination, and dependent origination means the middle way. Therefore, emptiness means the middle way. It is not nihilism. This is extremely important thing for us to know. Extremely important thing for us to know. The next point is the dependent origination. Dependent origination, it has it has three levels of dependent origination. Oftentimes, people, when they speak about emptiness, they say that, oh, things are empty because things are impermanent. One equates the understanding of impermanence and understanding of emptiness. This is where we're going wrong. Understanding of impermanence is very gross, whereas understanding of emptiness is extremely subtle. Extremely subtle. And in fact, for somebody to do a research on the meditation impermanence, this is not that difficult to get subjects. But to do a research on meditation and emptiness, it is so difficult to get the subjects, because the people who really understand emptiness is not so often what you find. So the point is that we have to keep in mind that dependent origination has three levels. Only when you realize that dependent origination has three levels, then you will be in a position to say that, okay, this understanding of the person A about emptiness is not the correct emptiness. It is a very gross emptiness. It is impermanence. It's not the understanding of emptiness. This distinction you can make, and then you can really segregate what is the right subjects from the wrong subjects. Okay. Three levels of dependent origination. Number one, dependent origination of the results dependence on the causes. In other words, causal dependent origination. Causal dependent origination. Number one. Number two, dependent origination of the whole's dependence on the parts. Whole and parts. The house is the whole, and for example, the self. The person is a whole, and the person's body and the mind, these are the parts. Dependent origination, second dependent origination is dependent origination of the whole's dependence on the parts. And third one is dependent origination of dependence on mere mental designation. Dependent origination of dependence on mere mental designation. Okay, so of these three, the third one is the subtlest. Third one is the subtlest, and if you want to get a subject who can meditate emptiness, that subject must be the one who understands the third level of dependent origination. If the person understands the first and second, the person is not eligible as the subject for the meditation on emptiness. So therefore, these three differ in the subtlety. And let me explain each one of them. The first one is dependent origination of the causation, causal dependent origination. In other words, dependent origination of the results dependence on the causes. Let's say that the COVID. Let's say that, okay, they say my mom started to have the fever, she lost the taste, she lost the smell, or it must be because of the COVID. COVID is the cause, and the mom's losing the taste and smell and the having fever and so forth as a result must be because of the COVID. So that is a cause-effect relationship. That is very gross. It's not subtle. It's very gross. It's very gross. So many people, they think that emptiness means things are dependent. Things depend on the causes, which is so gross. Okay, so simply people, and this understanding that the results are because of the causes. This pertains to the dependent origination of, in other words, the experience of impermanence. When you think of the cause and effect, it's more to do with the impermanence. It's not emptiness. Impermanence. And meditation, the impermanence has its own benefit, but the benefit is going to be much less as compared to the wisdom of emptiness. So this is very gross meditation. Next one is dependent origination of the wholes, dependence on the parts. Wholes dependence on parts. And on the here, the whole, let's say the cell, let's say okay, let's say the body cells, or the neurons. A neuron is made of the cell membrane and the axion and the dendrites and the nucleus. So these are the parts, and the neuron is the whole. So one whole comes into being by dependence on its smaller parts. That is the second level of dependent origination. That is, again, that is subtler as compared to the first one, but it is much grosser as compared to the third one, third level of dependent origination. Now the third one, and the third one is dependent origination or dependence on the mere mental designation. This is what is required for somebody to understand emptiness. And if somebody is very confident with this third level of dependent origin and emptiness, then the person can be the right subject for your research on the meditation emptiness. Okay, the third one, let me give an example. In other words, it says that things, everything that exists, they exist by dependence on your mind. On your mind, including your mind. Mind also exists by dependence on the mind. There's nothing objectively real there. There's nothing independently real there. And this understanding can come to the individual not through blind faith. And if somebody follows it blind faith, the person will never get to this understanding. It must be, somebody must reach to this conclusion only through rational analysis. Only through rational analysis. It is like the mathematical calculation. Only through rational analysis that one can get there. And let me give you an example. Let's say that you fall asleep and you start to have the dream, and the dream, say, within the one span of a dream, stretch of a dream. Let's say the first part is very pleasant dream. Second part is the first part. Let's say that you dream of family gathering after the COVID, after almost like 2 years of COVID. Then finally, all the family members, they're able to gather, you enjoy. Let's say this is the first part of the dream, and suddenly imagine that the third wave of COVID came. And then you come to get the news that the person who came to drop your birthday cake, that person is COVID positive. Then you start to panic. All of you start to panic. Okay, so that's the second part of the dream. In all these dreams, then the third part of the dream, where you go to have the test and everybody's tested negative, and you're very happy. So we see that the dream, it has varieties, pleasant, unpleasant, all these mixed dreams are there. Yet one thing which is common to all these dreams is that they're all coming from your mind. All these dreams, be it pleasant dream, unpleasant, they're all coming from the mind. From the object is empty. It's all coming from the subject. So when you speak of emptiness, it's meant that independent of the mental imputation, independent of what your mind creates, from the object is empty. It doesn't mean that things are non-existent. Things do exist by dependence, not independently. Things are empty of independent existence. If somebody were to ask you what exactly does mean the emptiness, emptiness means that everything is empty of independent existence. This is understanding. And how can you know this? This is what we're going to study from tomorrow. Okay, so we see that dependent origination, there are three levels. And the first one, in order to understand the third level, we have to understand the second level. In order to understand the second level, we have to understand the first level. And these are three levels of dependent origination. Then, as I indicated in the earlier slide, I indicated 5 levels of emptiness. So all these 5 levels of emptiness, we should be able to understand it on the basis of these 3 levels of dependent origination. Okay, let's see that the 5 are there. And tomorrow I'll try my best to make sure that in this particular computer, everything is set right. The 5 levels of emptiness meditation. Emptiness of permanent, unitary, independent entity, number 1. Number 2, emptiness of autonomous substance reality, number 2. Number 3 is the emptiness of externality. Number 4 is emptiness of true existence while not rejecting objective existence. And then finally, emptiness of objective / inherent / intrinsic existence. And of these 5 levels of emptiness, what kind of research are you going to do? So ideally speaking, if you say that we're doing the research on a meditation emptiness, it should be the number 5th one. So progressively it becomes subtler from the number 1 through to number 5. Number 5th one is the subtlest, emptiness of objective / inherent / intrinsic existence, which means emptiness of objective existence, or emptiness of inherent existence, or emptiness of intrinsic existence. These 3 are synonymous. Okay, we'll stop here for today. And if there are questions coming from the audience, questions will be the best. Of course, with the basic framework given. And from tomorrow, the next 3 sessions, we're going to we're going to specialize on the emptiness teaching. Okay, thus far, any questions? You're most welcome, particularly the faculties and students of NIMHANS. You are the priority because I can see that there are many from the Tibet House programs. They have for sure they'll have many questions, but I would rather welcome from the NIMHANS group the first. And you can also type in put in the chat if you find it difficult to speak. Okay, there's one. Can you explain? Okay, yes, Dr. Binduji.
Thank you so much for this very lucid presentation on various aspects of Buddhist meditation practices. It's very easy to follow you, very nice. But when we think about it, interpret it, it's difficult to comprehend some aspects of meditation. And especially, I don't know, we had also some wrong notions about the Buddhist meditation. For example, like when you say say, for example, compassion meditation. Definitely that helps in the release of various feel-good hormones. So our notion was totally different. We never knew that there are techniques that helps in entering into this compassion state. We were thinking that these are like through your proficiency you are reaching to that state of compassion. So information for us. We have to really study more about.
Okay. Yes, Professor Bindu, what you said is very true. So the compassion, within compassion, I was broadly speaking as compassion. In actuality, better would be to say the practice of, say, the feeling of closeness, feeling of love and affection. Within that, there are 4 categories. Compassion is 1, then the loving kindness is number 2, and joy. Then number 4 is the equanimity. All these 4 fall under the category of the feeling of expansion of your heart, of heart, the practice of the heart. There are various the divisions there. distinctions are there. Plus, I do not really go in detail. The last one, which is the bodhicitta, the very courageous mind to become perfect yourself, to attain the state of perfection yourself, to benefit all the beings. This is extremely the courageous practice, which has to be done by there are two methods. One which has 7 steps, and the other has 9 steps. So only through these steps, then one progresses along to get to that level where the compassion becomes extremely profound and vast. Yes.
Yeah, I will leave it to my students, my colleagues.
Yes.
Gulshan is a research scholar, so he wanted to discuss.
Yes. Yes.
Sir, I have one question regarding psychology and physiology. So,
Yes.
as you said, that meditation affects psychology and then physiology. So, how much time it needs for a meditator to affect this psychology, so that the psychology affect the physiology of the body and then also biology. So,
Okay. Okay. Duration.
yes, yes. And
Okay.
proficiency. Duration might be different, but how much
Duration for the
proficiency, how
proficiency.
can we measure that, okay, the person has reached that level that now psychology has affected the physiology of the subject?
Okay. So basically, this is a very good question. Very good question. And the best would be that under Dr. Binduji's leadership, then the young neuroscientists like yourself, you should actually, go there and be with the people who actually study these, practice these, and you see that, be with them, then you'll get a very good picture of that is what that's like. On that basis, you'll be the one to say how long it takes. Number one, what are the indications that the person gets to the level of the proficiency. Number one. Then how long does it take to reach that level? Okay, so ideally speaking, we see that it greatly depends on the individuals. For example, like even in the schools, for example, in schools, some children, when they do the homeschooling, some students who are very smart, they can just finish class 10 within the 5 years very easily, and some will take more than 10 years to complete class 10. So it differs, but the indications by that they say the individuals, they know the indications. For example, like let's say the with experience, right, they can see that heart is really literally, it is expanding. The feeling of love and affection is expanding earlier. Like it is not like in a few months or 1 or 2 years. It's like several years time. People can see that what earlier, when you think about others, your mind does not really flow towards others. With these practices, with the different methods, over time you see that your mind flows very freely. Very freely, you can feel all these things. One, and then when you feel that, cold waves flow through your body. This is purely physiological. And for this, the neuroscientist should be the one to really say, okay, when cold waves flow through the body, this is the test that we can do, the degree of the cold waves flowing through the body. And then the other one is tickling sensations. This is number 2. Then the number 3 is that somewhere at the heart, area of this heart, I don't know whether it's the biological heart or where, it is related to the biological heart as well. Somewhere at the center of the heart, you can feel extreme tranquility, which you have never experienced before. So these are what the individuals, the great practitioners, they can feel. Now it is your job to mix with them, to mix with them, and the best of the research can be done by actually being with them. For example, like say the people who do the research, they actually, it's like a field trip. They do field trip there, they stay there, they spend the time with them, they see the psychology, they see the environment, and on that basis, then they learn everything, what they're doing, what they're meditating, and then you will be in the position to say that, okay, for example, let's say these people, when they meet another the person who's meditating, not meditating, just through seeing the person speaking 2-3 lines, you can easily figure out whether the person was meditating or not meditating. Even if the other person says, I meditate 10 hours a day, or I meditate 10,000 hours, the last few years, even if the person says this, you can easily figure out that the effect, as you said, proficiency, whether the person reached that proficiency or not. And then for your information, unless you go there, you will not get the real subjects. The real subjects, they will hide their identity. Don't forget it. Real subjects pertaining to compassion, pertaining to emptiness meditation, they will hide their identity. Only if you mix with them, then they will sympathize with you. Otherwise, they will hide their identity. They will say that, and this is the thing, that unless you become really very close and they see that you are very sincere in what you're doing, then they can open up and they can, share you can get these people. Otherwise, so this is one thing. But for sure, if you want to do meditation on emptiness, then no. The research on meditation emptiness, then there's no doubt in this world, you see that the best of the subjects are only available in these big monastic universities. For the NIMHANS, you are very fortunate. You are just the neighbors to the big monastic universities. Sera, Depung, Gandan, and then Tashilumbu is there, Ratu is there, and then Namdruling is there. All these big monastic universities where there's rich academic studies and practices are there with you. Good.
Meditation, and you also give one example of mother caring about the child and very compassionate towards the child without doing any meditation even. Okay, so my question is that compassion contextual based, means mother might have compassion towards a child, may not be for other people, and
okay,
do this happens like for meditators, compassion meditation, okay, the compassion is only for human, maybe animals. Is that also for the like cutting trees and all those? Some people feel that cutting trees feel compassionate towards the tree, but may not feeling compassionate towards the human beings. Okay, sometimes they are more compassionate towards the human beings and less towards cutting trees, those kind of things. So can we say that compassion, even after doing meditation, is contextual based?
Okay, this is a good question. In fact, I'm glad that you brought this issue up. The compassion, His Holiness the Dalai Lama very clearly indicates that compassion is of two kinds. One which is a biological compassion, and the other is trained compassion. Biological compassion and the trained compassion. The compassion that the mother feels towards the child, this is biological. This is biological. And then they say a person, for example, biologically speaking, the females, they have a greater tendency for compassion as compared to the males, biologically speaking. But trained wise, pertaining to the trained compassion, the two have the same scope. If you don't train, then the girls have a greater potential for compassion and the males not, generally speaking. But if you're trained, then both, the males, females, both have the equal capacity to go into the say very sophisticated compassion. Now, compassion. I say some people, they have greater compassion towards the animals, than towards human beings. Some they openly they say that I don't like human beings. I really feel compassion with animals. Some say that no, I feel compassion with the trees and the vegetations. We should take care of the environment, the planet Earth, the Mother Earth. The Mother Earth, they feel compassion towards the environment, not as much to the animals and the animals and human beings. So there are different feelings of the closeness, the feeling of the closeness, and the compassion comes when you feel that the other object to which you feel compassion, other object has a feeling of pain and a feeling of pain. So when you see that some people, they feel that when you cut the trees they feel the pain. So you feel compassion because that person believe that the tree also has the pain. So the point is that compassion is directed towards the other person going through suffering, and you wish that the other person, the tree, the planet, be removed from the suffering. This is the point. In this connection, I would like to also bring it to your notice that compassion is not just, just like, okay, let's say, what is milk? This is milk, right? No, milk has so many kinds, right? For example, let's say the mobile. Oh, this is mobile. No, mobile has so many kinds, so many kinds. Likewise, compassion, there are so many kinds. Compassion, they say some compassion may be, they say some compassion may be very biased compassion. Biased compassion. But mother is love towards one's child, but not towards the neighbor's child. It's very biased. Now the compassion that this compassion can possibly not this compassion may have a very pleasant, nice feeling, but it can also be responsible for giving rise to unpleasant feelings. When you see that your child is not doing good and the neighbor's child is doing so good, then the jealousy comes. So whereas unconditional compassion, which is being trained, there are techniques by which to cultivate unconditional compassion. So that, if you can do research on that part, that'd be wonderful. And this one, the next one is compassion. Again, within compassion, this is also referred to as the 3 kinds of compassion. 3 kinds of compassion. Compassion just directed towards the suffering of the people, suffering of the beings. Second, compassion directed towards the reasons that the beings are changing, transitory. And the compassion directed with the reason, directed by the reason that the beings are suffering because of not knowing that everything is dreamlike. So even the compassion, within compassion, we can say that there's a broadness of compassion, and there's a subtlety of the compassion, profundity of the compassion, and the intensity of compassion. All this you need to keep in mind. The nuances, the various aspects of compassion, intensity, the broadness, the subtlety or the profundity. All these, the different facets you need to keep in mind. And when you speak of compassion, don't just speak of compassion in general. Compassion, the universal compassion, and biased compassion, biological compassion, and the unconditional compassion, trained compassion. So all these distinctions you need to keep in mind. On that basis, then you can design your research. Good, thank you.
Emptiness meditation. Could you suggest books on emptiness?
Say it again.
Emptiness meditation.
Okay.
Books.
Okay, books. Don't worry. So that the one book that I will suggest would be that the one book that I may suggest is, of course, on the 4th day I will give you the names. But today, one book that I may suggest is by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And for emptiness, don't read. You want to get the original emptiness, or you want to get the fake emptiness. If you want to get the fake emptiness, you can read any book. But if you want to get the original emptiness, you read the original books, good books. So one book that is very good is the book by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which is How to See Yourself as You Really Are. How to see yourself as you really are. How to see yourself as you really are. This is a very good book and easy to read. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, there are some questions in the chat box.
Yes, 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 please.
Maria? Okay, you can come on.
Yes, ma'am. So my question is, so this is something I've been trying to figure out. So how does human goodness and Darwinian survival instincts intersect? This is my question.
Okay. The innate human goodness versus Charles Darwin's survival, the survival of the fittest theory. Okay, this is a good question. In fact, what I would say is that one, the first thing that we need to keep in mind is to treat them as separate. Initially, just keep them in different compartments. What Charles Darwin said, and what you have heard about the basic human goodness, and the ancient Indian teachers, they taught. So put them into different compartments and then try to see whether they tally or whether they go divergent. This is what you have to explore. Charles Darwin evolutionary theory, the survival of the fittest. Yes, Charles Darwin said that anger, attachment, the fear, these are the instincts that we inherit from our ancestors. These are the evolutionary instincts, evolutionary gifts for you, for your survival. Without these, you cannot survive. This is what Charles Darwin said. For example, attachment. You need, in the winter, you need the heat. In the summer, you need cold. And every day, you need food. And these things, nobody will give you for free. You have to go to look for these. You have to go to look for these. So there must be a mechanism inside you to look for these. That mechanism is known as attachment. Attachment to food, attachment to the cool sensation, warm sensation, the clothing, and so forth. The attachment will gather the conducive factors for survival. And the anger or the aversion will push aside the, non-conducive factors away from you. And then the fear will make you run away from the threats. Otherwise, you will die. So this is from Charles Darwin's evolution theory, particularly survival of the fittest. The concept is just like the humans, the instinct is, there's instinct there, attachment, anger, jealousy, fear, and so forth. And these things are nothing good in there. So whereas on the other hand, we speak about the basic human nature as the goodness as the basic human nature. How can we see the two things as compatible? So the answer lies that the Charles Darwin's evolution theory is really wrong. I would say no. It's not wrong. Because this is what we see. This is how the human beings operate. That is for sure. This is how the human beings operate. Now, almost like 98% of the human beings, the animals, they behave like this. This is the animal instincts. But instinct doesn't mean that doesn't mean that this can be replaced by some goodness, or remove these instincts, and the good qualities from within. The base human goodness will manifest from inside. That is 100% possible. For example, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama says that, the anger and attachment, Charles Darwin argues that with these, you can survive. Without these, you're going to survive. But it's not true. Instead of anger and attachment, if you have compassion, how the mother survives. The mother gives things to the children. Mother, takes mother sacrifices to remove the threats, the fears of her children. And the mother makes sure that she remains very strong so that the children are benefited. So this compassion actually does all the intended, the purposes of what Charles Darwin said as the purpose fulfilled by attachment, aversion, and fear. So compassion can do that. So with this, and not only it can do that, compassion can do it very effectively, where the attachment can really take us into problems. So with attachment, then we will end up into all these family fights, chaos, jealousies, all these things happen because of attachment. And the anger can really ruin your immune system. The neuroscientists, many of the neuroscientists, they openly say that the anger consumes your immune system. And these are all facts. Nowadays, we can see that so obviously. Somebody who's so angry and stressed, the person becomes ill very quickly, and the person does not really last long. Yeah, these are all the facts. So from this, we see that what the Charles Darwin said is true. At the same time, instincts does not mean that these are not something which cannot be gotten rid of. We can get rid of. Not only we can get rid of, replace them with good factors to bring our greater success and flourishing in the humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Namaste, Geshe.
Namaste, Dr. Ravindraji.
Namaste. Thank you for the wonderful session today. What I understood is that the emptiness you told everything is is on the dependent origination. So at the three levels, from the gross to the subtle, and including our psychological activities. So in that case, a simple question that I have is, what is the concept of self in the context of dependent origination? Or if a person who is expert in this emptiness meditation, what will be the concept of self to the meditator as such?
Okay.
So is self independent or dependent on anything else?
Okay, this is a good point. It'll be easier for the neuroscientists. Because I came across neuroscientists, really standard neuroscientists, particularly Mind Life Conference, the neuroscientists, and they encountering with His Holiness, we see that our body operates, our brains operate so effectively. But some of the neuroscientists, what they say is that there's no one part of the brain which administers everything in the brain. Okay, which delegates all the works in the brain. There's no one part in the brain which is like the head office to delegate all the works. It's just like everything is working in synchrony, not like one central administrator administering all the brains. Yet the brain works so well in such a synchrony. And so like there's one entity which governs everything. Yet the brain is there. We cannot deny the existence of the brain as the agent. Likewise, the self is there. The self is there. With the emptiness, it doesn't mean the self doesn't exist. Everything exists. We have to keep in mind that everything exists. Yet, we're not discussing whether the self exists or things don't exist. We're discussing how things exist, how the self exists. Self exists by dependence. Self does exist. It does not exist independently. It does exist dependently. And the self is the one which has to meditate on emptiness. Self is the one which does the neuro research, neuroscience. So self does exist. It does exist. It exists dependently. This is the point. The way the brain exists but dependent on every parts. All parts of the brain, they are mutually dependent. There's no one central, the central system which delegates the work to the different parts of the brain. So because of which, we need to make a distinction. The self exists. The self does not exist independently. So what is not accepted is the self, the mode of existence of the self, not the self. self does exist, the mode of existence, objective mode of existence or independent mode of existence, that is rejected. The self per se is not rejected.
The existence of self occurs when the mind becomes more gross. And in a subtler mind, when the mind becomes subtler and subtler, that dissociates. There occurs the dissolution of the concept.
Okay, Dr. Binduji, say it again. I could not, your voice broke in between.
The concept of self exists in our gross mind.
Okay.
But when the mind becomes subtler and subtler, this just distorts the concept.
Okay. This is what we need to keep in mind. This where, the study would be very helpful. The self exists. The self exists at the time of gross mind, at the time of subtle mind. In both cases, the self exists. The self exists. How does the self exist? It exists by dependence on the mind and the body. And as the mind becomes subtler, it dissolves. It doesn't mean that the mind annihilates. This is not a connotation of the dissolution. It simply means the mind becomes subtler. It's like a balloon. Balloon, you inflate it, it takes a huge size, shape, and then you deflate it, then the size becomes smaller, but the balloon per se will not annihilate. The balloon will remain. Only thing is that balloon, the size will decrease. It becomes smaller. Likewise, the mind, as the mind, what is technically referred to in English, technically referred to as the dissolution process, the mind becomes subtler. The mind per se does not disappear. The mind continues to remain. Only the form becomes different. Initially it was very gross, now it becomes subtler. And by dependence on the subtle mind, the self is designated. Self still exists, but dependence on the subtle mind.
You can read out that. Questions. Some more questions we have seen from other participants.
Okay. That is Masunda.
Yeah, where is it? Can we read? There is one question. Kindly explain the causal level of dependent origin.
Okay. Kindly explain the causal level of the dependent origination. Causal dependent origination. It means causal means cause and effect. Cause and effect. All effects must come into existence only by dependence on their causes. For example, say somebody who succeed, who is a Nobel laureate in physics, is all because of the causal factor of working so hard and being brilliant in physics, that the person becomes a Nobel laureate in physics. In other words, we talk about everything, every movement leaves a signature. It means cause and effect relationship. Anything that comes into being, any effect that comes into being must necessarily come into being by dependence on the previous causes. Nothing happens randomly. This is the meaning.
Thank you so much, Gisela.
Okay.
for
Next
enlightening us
question.
on this very important aspects of the talk, the core concepts of the true nature of the mind. Like you have just enlightened us on the various mental attributes that can be achieved through meditation practice. Well, let us also do a little homework to understand these various concepts, what you have taught us today. Thank you. So we look forward to attend the next course on Friday.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, those of you who have more questions, we still have more sessions. You can bring them up during that session. Otherwise, those who have already put in the chat, we will read them in the next session. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Dr.
Geshe.
Binduji, Dr. Ravindraji, Tejamala, and each and every one of you, all the students, faculties of NIMHANS, and all the participants from other parts of the world. Okay, thank you. See you again.